And welcome to the King of Podcasts with another Podcasters Row, and happy to help welcome another guest to the program. And join me right now, my guest has a show that is recognized as a top 20 global podcast on thought leadership by Thinkers 360. And on the program, it's called The Breakfast Leadership Show. And my guest shares his experience, leadership, and personal development knowledge, drawing on extensive experience as a business consultant, coach, and speaker. And with me right now on the program is the Chief Burnout Officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network, Michael Levitt. Thanks for being on, Michael.
Great to be with you today.
You provide practical tips and actionable advice, navigating leadership challenges and overcoming obstacles that may hinder personal and organizational growth. So with this show, Chief Burnout Officer, let me ask you this now, just right off the bat. You know, one of those things that really contributed to the, for people burning out at work in the workplace was because of the fact that we had so many people that were going to the office on a regular basis. And then we had pandemic. And I can only imagine now the leadership role, there's a couple different variables that have happened since. People have not necessarily gone back to the office. I know I haven't gone since then. And others, in order to have in that leadership role, in order to be able to control, and manage the employees and manage workflow, it's all this now through online, and given the option to keep employees at bay and to keep them happy, they haven't necessarily had to go back to work every day of the week or at all. So I'm just wondering, what do you think about the whole setup right now for leaders and employees in the space and what you normally talk about?
Well, for me, what I tell people is, especially if there's this dynamic of going into the office or hybrid or remote completely, and there's a tug of war, and we're seeing it a lot in a lot of different industries. I just go to both the employees and the employers and say, okay, what do your customers need? Don't forget to ask them that. Without customers, you have no business. So find out what makes sense for them. If remote works and things are continuing to work and you're continuing to deliver to your customers, then go ahead. If hybrid is better, then so be it. If it's full-time in office and that works for your team, great. But I always tell people, especially during the pandemic, and I was kind of surprised when organizations said, we're going to just stay remote forever. I thought that was a bit premature for many companies. Meta, for example, because they were saying we were going to be remote, and now they're, threatening get back to the office or we're going to fire you. So quite a change from what they were saying in the early days of the pandemic. But I understand it. A lot of it goes down to management techniques, their style, their comfort levels. To manage a remote team takes some additional skills from the classic, walk around the office and see your people and talk to them face to face. So it's a different approach, but ultimately it boils down to we're still in the midst of sorting all of this out. It's going to take some time for companies to land on where they're going to be for a period of time. And I don't think it'll always be in flux. I think organizations will find their spot, and employees that want to be in a hybrid environment, we're going to migrate to those companies that provide that, and those that want to stay remote all the time are going to find companies that allow that, or they'll launch their own businesses. We're seeing a lot of that. And the companies that want everybody in person all the time, there's a lot of people that really thrive in that type of environment. So it's just a case of finding the right dance partner in all of this.
I'll tell you, I have had the chance to work in the corporate environment, which I hated. I respect corporations and how they can be able to operate, but I always feel like that, while productivity is still the name of the game, there's always can be more productivity can be done if the employees were able to feel like they were empowered. They felt like they had more to benefit from it. If they felt like they were involved or they were at one with the company to get more done, and that was their onus. They wanted to feel like that they contributed to something and that they were part of it. That there's a passion for them to have it. Talking about that part, I mean, for those of the guests that you had on, I see 638 shows to date. So how far back are we going? How long have you done this show now? It feels like it's been a decade, right?
February 2017. So not quite a decade. There was just
Wow.
a ton of interviews
You're doing two a
during the
week roughly, or publishing two a week.
yeah. For there was some weeks where I just had to get through a lot because I was interviewing just a ton of different people, and I'm thrilled that I've been able to do that for as long as I have when I really didn't want to do a show in the first place. So it grew on me, to say the
Well,
least.
it's one of those things where, I mean, hopefully this program, I'm hoping to go ahead and get it where there's more episodes that are going to go along, and I'll just have a flood of people that I want to just bring on because I don't want to do it like a once a week format. I'd like to have as many people on as possible. So what I want to get now from you is the point about, I guess, of the guests that you had on.
Mhm.
How many have been from the corporate versus the grassroots space? For those that are, maybe smaller businesses, or those that have worked for a very small outfit. Because for me, I've gone through the corporate,
Mhm.
and if I didn't feel like I was more or less involved with it, that was one of the things I had there. But first of all, just give me the makeup of the guests right now of where they come from, their backgrounds.
Yeah, most of them were, I mean, their businesses have grown quite a bit now, but they did start off as a solo shop or entrepreneur or solopreneur, and they just landed on some success now. A lot of them were, authors and also Harvard business professors and astronauts, just a wide range of amazing human beings that I've been able to speak to over the years. But there's a common thread in all of them is the journey that it took them to get to where they are was not a straight line. It was very twists and turns, ups and downs, and a lot of learning opportunities sprinkled in. Sometimes they had burned out a little bit. Some haven't, which is good. But it's been an interesting dynamic. But I find both with corporate people that are, really successful, and a lot of them have left the corporate world and they launched their own business because they shared the sentiment that you had mentioned before, and others are still in the midst of it, but they're starting to explore and looking for ways to get out there and cause their own dent in the universe when it comes to their leadership perspectives and the things that grow their business.
Is there any kind of ongoing theme that you normally have when it comes to a company that might have been started as a smaller business, as a startup, and then moved up into something that's much more structured, a lot more infrastructure, a lot more having to micromanage? What
Yeah,
something
for
that's just
them,
really grown so much? Is there something that you've learned from a lot of these guests that's kind of like an ongoing trait that they've done to try to keep the sense of what the initial company started with, to not let the growth overtake what the original mission was?
yeah, a lot of the commonalities that I see in these companies is they wanted to continue with that small feel to it, even though they've grown quite a bit. And that has to be intentional. You have to make sure that you are training your management as best you can so they are walking the walk with the theme of the organization. Break down the silos, make sure those communication paths are open. You've seen instances where they say flatten the org chart type of thing. I see a lot of that in the successful companies where the team knows, and they, going back to what you said a few moments ago, the team feels like that they have a voice, they have a say in how they're doing their jobs, what they're doing, and the organization really understands those people so they can put them in their sweet spot and really thrive on the work that they really enjoy doing, as well as investing in their professional development if they want to learn something different or something new, because that just makes for a better employee. Or if they happen to leave, well, guess what? They've left on a very positive term. They're going to have nothing but good things to say about you. And you're going to continue to recruit and retain top talent because you're an organization that creates this environment for people to create and also be able to learn and grow along the way.
But now, one of the things too is that to recruit in new talent and to keep talent on board, I imagine it's gotten tougher because of what you now see in the news about so many people that are wanting to go ahead and do the Great Resignation. We heard about that for the last couple of years. You're hearing
Right.
about all these different incentives to be brought on. I mean, I just think about my brother in the industry, where in the medical industry, talk about how looking for X-ray technicians or people in radiology or MRI techs in his field, that they're just picking people out of college now before they're even graduated because there's just not enough talent out there. And then the kind of money they have to put up front just to get them on board. There's been a lack of talent that's been out there to get after. So are you taking people that are subpar and trying to hope for the best? Or, I mean, talk to me about the obstacles now to try to keep talent and keep them around, because these days people feel like they can go and switch to wherever they want. But then again, there's not that much flexibility in terms of how many jobs are out there, or is there any flexibility in terms of how many employees are available that you can get that are going to be just as effective and just as productive?
Yeah, it's a really challenging time for both job seekers and for employers because they have to figure out, okay, what can we do to keep these employees? And if you're asking that question, my sense is you haven't been doing a good job of that anyway. If you have a culture, like I mentioned before, where everyone has input, they feel like they're contributing, they're growing the business and all of that, those people tend to stay. And even if they take on something else, it may be just a situation where it's a senior level promotion at an outside company because the current path of the organization, including managers and C-suite and all of that, people don't want to leave because it's a great company.
Right.
So sometimes the only way you can get promoted in those situations is to leave. And that's a difficult discussion because it's rare, unfortunately, for you to leave a great company and go to another great company unless you're really good at doing the homework
Right.
on what is what. The thing of it is for talent, and I always tell people this, if you're having difficulty finding work, level up your skills. Go to YouTube University, buy a course on Udemy or whatever. Find out what skills are in demand right now. You just mentioned, X-ray technicians, the medical field. The medical field is going to continue to expand because,
Right.
one, our population is aging. They're getting more complex. They're living longer, but you're still going to need MRIs and CAT scans and X-rays and other
Right.
types of diagnostics that people can go into, and it's a great opportunity to work in it because we, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, will always need healthcare, and it's important for us to focus on those industries. So if you're getting ready to enroll in college or university and you say, well, I want to be this, well, try to look ahead and talk with some mentors and people in the different industries and saying, that's great that you want to be an architect, but AI is going to be able to do that in about 10 seconds based on the parameters we throw at it. So there may not be a need as much for that role. And that doesn't mean there's not going to be other roles created. There's roles that we do today that did not exist 20 years ago,
Yeah.
or even 10 years ago. So saying, oh, all these jobs are getting eliminated. Yes, they are. But guess what? There's going to be new opportunities and new fields and things like that. So find out what is in need now, but continue to level up your skills, because when you do that, when trends change, then you have a leg up and you have this motion and basically muscle memory of wanting to continue to learn and grow. And when you do that, you're going to be able to pivot and switch industries a lot easier than people that just say, I'm just going to be an architect and I'm not doing anything else.
Now, you mentioned about the employee standpoint, but let's go to the leadership standpoint itself. So, I mean, I have a bit of a management role, in middle management anyway, but, I do have staff that works underneath me. And, I've had to keep it where I've been so lean at work, like honestly, or my company that I work for now, where I run a couple of podcast networks, we're very lean and mean. I mean, we don't really talk about how many people we have in the company. And if I told you you'd be surprised because of how much work we get done. But in order for us to do that, leadership, we had to work for a long time to cut down the amount of meeting time, to try to go and say, okay, there's all these different things we have to go and discuss. We don't need a meeting for everything. And if the meetings are going to get done, we got to get it done within a certain time frame. So for us right now, we finally got to the point where an hour meeting on Monday mornings usually is about the right trick. And if we need something additional, that's fine. Sales meetings, if it's a pitch, they're going to take much longer to go on, and they may drone along us all you want. That's what the head of our sales and business development does. She'll just go ahead and kind of work a long way through. What about the time that's available? Because if you're getting people to work from home, and then you're wanting to go and have that 8 hour schedule, or you just want to try to have them curb away from doing the 8 hour schedule. So you know what? You try to encourage them to, work to live, live to work.
Mhm.
What do you think about that? I mean, do you feel like because of the home environment now, is that something that's going to get a little abused?
Well, just in everything, there was abuse when people were going into the office all the time,
Right.
and they weren't being as productive. Weren't filling in the 8 hour shift. Now, I've said this many times. I'm originally from Detroit, so what I'm about to say might come off as being have a little bit of blasphemy to it.
Right.
But my particular opinion on office work is we need to say goodbye to the Henry Ford way of working. The 8 hour assembly line made sense. You build cars, trucks, whatever. It's an
Right.
assembly line. There's things that you do it over a certain time.
Yeah.
They applied that to the office world, and they should have never done that.
Interesting.
My perspective is, as a leader, a manager, an organization, you have things to build or services to provide or pitch decks or whatever. You clearly assign what you want your people to do, whether they're graphic designers, sales, IT, you name it, whatever. Clearly articulate what their role is. Make sure they understand all the aspects of the job. Give them all the tools they need to do that job extremely well, and they're motivated, and they're in like in your situation, you've got a lean team, but they're all in it and all of that. You have, without knowing a lot about your business, have created the systems in a way where they have everything they need to get the job done. You let them get the job done. If they get it done in 2 hours, awesome. If it takes them 10 hours, fine. Unless it's a 2 hour job, then you're like, okay, you need some additional training and whatnot. But it's a situation, in many ways, organizations have to get their mindset away from, okay, I'm paying an hourly rate, even if they're salary. I'm still paying, I paid you 8 hours. I should get 8 hours back. No, you're paying for their expertise. You're paying for their skills. You're paying for their knowledge that they bring to the table. And some people like working more hours. Some people like working less. But if they're getting the work done that you're assigning to them, and they're not fatigued and they're not burned out and they're creating great stuff, awesome. And it's kind of you figure out what it'll give. It's like, I was listening to an audiobook this morning, and the book was talking there was a section in there where the author was a teenager at the time, and he bought the sports car, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and he never really drove more than maybe 70 miles an hour in it. But 1 o'clock in the morning, nobody on the road. He's like, all right, let's see what this thing has.
Right.
And he punched it and nailed it. And then this old beat up car next to him was keeping up with him. So he'd go a little bit faster. And then the beat up car would catch up to him again. And the beat up car rolled down his window and flashed a badge and said, slow down. And it was a police officer in his own car. So needless to say, the guy slowed down. But we do have to push our employees a bit. We also have to push ourselves a bit to see what we're capable of, because otherwise we can get kind of slacking and just relaxed in comfort, and comfort's a dangerous place to hang out in. But
Right.
ultimately, it's like, find the rhythms that people are really thrived in, the workflow, have it flow together with all the other team. Then you accomplish a lot more in less time. And then from there, you can create those opportunities to brainstorm. Okay, how do we grow the business? Okay, what market would we like to explore? We don't take time to that because we're so overwhelmed with the overloaded work days that we don't take time to reflect. And we say, okay, well, we can do this at 4:30 on a Thursday. Well, it's been a long week. Brain's not going to work that well unless you're wired to think better in the afternoons than the morning. So long story short is, clearly articulate what the roles are, what's needed, when the deliverables are by, give them all the tools, get out of their way. Make sure you're available as a manager. Check in, yes, but just to make sure everything's flowing accordingly. But don't just expect this. I pay you for 8 hours. I should get 8 hours work. We've seen the stats. The most productivity anybody is given out right now at max is 3 hours a day. Max. So it's like, well, I'm going to work a 12-hour shift. Guess what? 9 hours of that was complete crap, and you didn't create anything. So good job on wasting, 9 hours of your life because you didn't generate anything worth anything.
Let me unpack a couple of things onto that. So when it comes to being lean, the company that I work for, I'm saying that we have what's essential for the workflow that we have, for the workload that we have. So it's always being able to go ahead and put the employee load that we have to handle the threshold of content and the threshold of work we have to get done. Because I would never want to go ahead and include somebody else into the mix unless we're just overwhelmed and we don't have enough. We need someone else to go ahead and pick up the slack, the overflow of extra work. So it's always about the workflow is we have the resources and the manpower or the employee power to go ahead and handle those tasks. That's where it is right now. The other thing too is that I agree with you with the whole point. Yeah, I don't agree with the 8-hour work week either. But again, I live the work. I mean, because I have independent projects that have this, and I don't work a 9 to 5. And it was the whole reason I got out of corporate in the first place, because I don't want to work that Henry Ford work week. That's the part I think is true. I mean, there's a part of it where there has to be some structure to know when people are going to be available, if you need to ask them questions, or if there's something you need of them that's a task that has to be finished by a certain time. Like there should be deadlines in place, absolutely. But I think having it where it's set to such a strict clock in, clock out, I agree with that. I'm not much of a fan of that either, but that's the corporate mindset. And that's one of the things I got out of corporate for that very reason. The other thing too is that I think it's also the point about that the job that you have and the employee that you have for that task, there's never any shortage of work. You want to make sure that they always have, first of all, they have the mindset of saying, okay, you're never going to get your work done and then, okay, clock out. No, there's always going to be something else that's got to get done. But they just have to realize, listen, you just need to manage your workflow. We're here to help you with that and then keep going. And that's part of the thing I just think that is important, is that if they keep that thought like, okay, I got to get this work done, got to get it done, get shit done. I remember it was a guy I worked at iHeartRadio. He called himself the VP of GSD. Get shit done. And it's true. Like, he was very efficient, but we can't always get those efficient employees either. That's very hard to come by. Now, you talk about resources and tools, and software as a service, obviously something very popular out there. In my company, we've gone through Salesforce, Basecamp, Slack. I could name some others, but like I said, we've gone through a number of different routes to try to go through different platforms for, managing our content, from going from, what is it, Cold Fusion and Blue Dragon to a WordPress setup to, other various website setups. And if we had to import all of our content from one to the other, or if it was different methods of either handling documents or sending out things. Like right now we're on a new platform, you maybe have heard of Monday, and that's becoming a new platform. That's the new du jour. And we're integrating into that. We're only about a month into it. But like I said, for me right now, undertaking. But at the end of it, the data entry, all the things I have to do to go ahead and get that up to speed with what everything else is being done. My thing has always been, feeling I have to duplicate everything right now because I have one format I've been using. I have to get used to the new format and then eventually integrate into the new. But with all of that, what do you think about the software as a service issue and where people are right now to have those tools and resources? Plus, you have to have these people trained to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's software. It's a tool, just like any other tool. If you're in construction, you've got your drills and your hammers and saws and things like that. But you have to make it a tool and not become your existence. Yeah, it's like, you want to use it as a tool. You don't want to say, well, to pick on Monday, and that's a great product. You want to say, well, our business is Monday. No, that's not my business. But often we see companies spend so much time, tinkering with it and spending time in there that it actually takes away from the actual work. So the whole idea of these is to help streamline things. I used to work in healthcare, and the electronic health records or electronic medical records, whatever you want to call it, that the clinicians and doctors use, there isn't one that is better than the other, because how people work and their workflow, it varies. So you're like, okay, we want this product, but you got 10 people, they could be doing things 10 different ways. They still get the outcomes that they need, but sometimes those tools don't work in the same kind of flow. But it's a case like you mentioned before. It's learning how to use that and being open to, maybe if we use this way, it'll flow better. It might not, but ultimately it's, instead of playing with the fear of missing out and going, okay, we got to use Salesforce because everybody else is using it, or we're going to use Monday, or the countless others
Well,
that are
but
out there.
for us, it is about trying to go ahead and keep it where we can stay lean and mean. So if we don't have
Right.
to go in, if you just have the right people that can handle it, and part of it is we want to have a process that can be automated. Like, I mean, for what for the management of my company does, I understand the purpose of trying to go and automate, because every one of these things has always been, well, because we're trying to go ahead and keep generating more revenue, but the way we have to do it, it's kind of just a broken piecemeal kind of deal. Where, I mean, right now, I know for me, I'm using loads of spreadsheets. I have
Mm,
4 email accounts to manage. I have documents up the wazoo, and it's been a lot to keep up. I mean,
right.
I have Gmail that actually helps out, for all of the company stuff, but still, it's a lot to go and keep up, because then on top of that, I'll have all this that's reminders and tasks and snoozed emails and, labeled and everything like that. But it's an undertaking. I mean, I
Sure.
haven't necessarily found anything that will take care of. It's like set it and forget it, all in one automation that'll handle it for you. The part is that I think it comes down to whatever software as a service you have, how much of a human component is required.
Right. Yeah, it's really important too, as we continue to get new automation tools, and even to the point like, AI will recognize an email, especially if you're getting emails all the time for different requests, like
Yeah.
being on your show, for example, or a product or a service that you offer. Well, then eventually it'll get trained to the point where it's going to say, I am going to respond to this email, and automatically, where it really doesn't touch your hands. I mean, you can look at it, but using a CRM where it can group all of your emails into one thing, and help kind of filter it and prioritize is a big thing. A big game changer for me is, yeah, and you're running a business, you've got so much to do. You realize, all right, there's only so much that I can do, or I'm
Right.
going to have the energy to do. Let's prioritize. In me, I typically have themes for my days. So you mentioned earlier about calls on Monday and things like that. So my Mondays are usually doing research for keynote talks, or if I happen to be on a show, that's great. Tuesday, intro calls, follow up calls.
Right.
Again, maybe a podcast show. Wednesdays tend to be the day that I record my podcast. Thursdays and Fridays, I don't pre schedule anything. I
Right.
leave those days open for anything that develops earlier in the week. And they say, yeah, can we jump on a quick call? Yes. How's your Thursday, or how's your Friday?
Yeah.
And and it took time to get it that way. And it also took a lot of time in figuring out, when am I most productive and when am I not as productive, and
Yeah.
group those tasks. And Monday is a great way to do that. You can say, okay, for my, deep thinking spreadsheet kind of stuff, I'm better at that in the morning. Okay, well, start shifting that work, and basically build out your schedule for you. So, which in a way is kind of like how you were, micromanaged before in corporate. Okay, at 10:30 you work on the spreadsheet, and now when we're business owners, we're like, I want the flexibility when I want to do this. But if you group like things together, your brain is using whatever quadrant it's using at that time. So you're not bouncing around trying to go, okay, I got to do a sales pitch and I got to do, a
Yeah.
spreadsheet. Well, you're using different parts of your brain. So if you group things more like together, it's a lot less back and forth on your head, and it just makes it a lot easier. But again, going down to understanding what your workflow currently looks like, what they can do in a CRM or any type of system, and manage it accordingly, and work through it. And maybe you change up a little bit, but if it makes
Right.
it easier for you to do, then that's the power of software as a service for sure.
Well, but I'm working, working for 30 years, and I've gotten used to the fact of, okay, we got this new platform. It's going to help to automate someone. And right now with Monday, I'm not discouraged by it. It's just it's an undertaking right now just to get set up to get it up to speed. And
Mhm.
it's one of those things where the boss man, it's like he wants to get it up and running. It's like, okay, I get it, but when it comes to getting we have all these different people we have as contacts that have been appeared on a podcast, or PR people that are attached. Plus, there's proposals. Plus, there's scheduling and booking and onboarding and all this other stuff that we know he wants to integrate in. I get it, and we'll get there eventually. But I want to. But like right now, it's a lot to go ahead and take in and just kind of go to. But also, if enough people have enough time to adopt to software that's going to work out for them and not bail out when they haven't had a chance
Yeah.
to really get into it. Because I had somebody that was on that talked about using Monday, and I remember they said, we got out of it because it was just, people really got upset about it. But that's the employees saying they don't see the benefit of what it is.
Yeah.
And they feel like that's also like, there could be questions about transparency, about, are they getting micromanaged because now their work is being checked and all that? I don't care about that. But there's a lot of things about trying to go and use software that's supposed to be a better of a convenience and to make your workflow much easier. But like you said, all those things right there, human components, you have to work with different various, sides of your brain to get whatever you got to get done. The other part is that people are so insistent on automation because, we have the things where, they can't pay for staff. Staffing shortages is becoming an ongoing thing right now, or relying on outsourcing or contracting some other people. One of the things that we see a lot now with work is, you know, just go to like a fast food restaurant. I mean, you see, or a grocery store, self checkout, plenty of self checkout with very little human interaction, doing checkout counters or actual service that you can go to somebody to ask for help. You're seeing that more often. And obviously, companies and corporations are seeing the same thing. They feel like, well, I mean, we can do the same thing. We can work with, even though we might not have the budget to staff more people, and maybe we don't want to staff more people that we have to recruit. Maybe we could just do it another way. When you see right now and the guests you bring on, what do you see about that part where you mentioned AI, human versus AI, or human versus machines?
Yeah, there's still a lot of research in that. There's companies that have been they're doing a lot of work on that, going, okay, what can we automate and use AI, whether it's bots or just streamlining a lot of the work, proposals, sales decks, or for example, or, writing documentation. There's still a human element to it to review it, but you would have, let's say you're a print house or a magazine. So you have somebody write the article, then you have the editor edit it, and then, the chief editor looks at it and goes. So you got at least 3 people looking at it, but maybe more. Well, now they can say, okay, we're going to have somebody, write an article using AI, making sure you're not plagiarizing anything. But we also have the phrase, there's nothing new under the sun. So it's, you can write about it 15 different ways, but it's still the same subject. But ultimately, there's areas there where they could streamline it. Somebody edits it, and then it gets through, so it has a human flair to it. But that's one example. The self checkouts is another. I mean, it's gone is the customer service desk in many places. Like there's a grocery store that I shop at, they don't have a customer service desk. I've never seen it. There's a manager that roams around, and they just basically you talk to one of the cashiers that's working, and they'll page them, and they can come down and talk with you. But the self checkout thing is something where people go through it all the time. What's comical, and I'll use I don't because they're not a sponsor. I always hate using names, but the Costco that I go to, okay?
Right.
Go in there on a Saturday or Sunday morning. The lineup for self checkout is longer than going through a cash register, and it's like people are just going to self checkout, and I'm like, why are you standing in a longer line? You can actually get a human to check it, and it's going to be quicker because you're going to go, okay, does this thing, if it doesn't have a barcode on it, like, okay, how much is this? Although Costco's not a good example, but let's say at a regular grocery store, it's like you grab a pineapple or something, and you're like, does it scan? No. Okay, you got to look up the big code of all the produce, and you're like, okay, 06522 beep, and it's like, no, that's not a plum, but all right. But ultimately, it's a case of it really depends. And I know there's a lot of people that hate the self checkouts because, like, well, that's taking a job away from somebody. But on the flip side of it, it's like we're having such a difficult time finding people that would want to work that type of job.
Right.
Companies have to, we got to sell stuff to stay open. So we have to have a mechanism here. So it's much like the hybrid versus in person versus fully remote. We're still in the midst of all of this things going on, and it's frustrating for us humans because we like certainty. We like things to be set. We don't like this. Okay, how long is this going to last? 2 weeks to flatten a curve. Remember that one? It's like
Yeah.
that was a long two. That was a long 2 weeks. But we didn't know, and then people were like, "Wait a minute!" And we're so used to this instant gratification that we've been accustomed to with all the advents of technology and everything else is when we don't get it, it actually messes with our mind because, like, wait a minute, that's not the result I was expecting. So it causes a lot of confusion. But ultimately, I think managers and companies are still looking at how to utilize it. If there's areas that they can streamline and cut out some of the quote unquote tedious work and just have people work in the areas that it really needs some specialties, then I think those are the companies that will leverage it well.
I bet you if you do a cross section as to who those that do not like self checkout versus those that don't mind it, I would imagine there's a bit of an age gap in terms of who's older, trying to go ahead and adopt to that. So for those that have been very computer literate all their lives, I bet you much be easier for them to do that. But then also, if you also worked in the space, because I've worked in grocery stores, so used to having that part and say, okay, I just make the order, this and that here and there. Like I was just at
Mm,
Target yesterday to go to self checkout. Oh, okay, bananas. Got to put it on the scale. Okay, here you go. Price per pound. It does it for you. I mean, they've made it where, it's the same thing with just like software as a service. If as long as it's functional and it's very easy to go and use, then you can get away with it. And you'll get some people that will not like it. But for the bulk of people that get used to it, they just got to figure out how to go ahead and watch for those that are not using it right. And they're kind of stealing from there because there's a whole lot of, loss prevention issues that are going on with that part. Now,
exactly.
I want to also bring up the point of, well, I should go and get to your books. There's a whole lot that you work on. I don't even know how you can handle all this going on, but what I want to go and also ask real quickly is just, has there been anything? Obviously, you had the part that you said it was blasphemous about, Henry Ford's work week, it doesn't have to be. Is there anything you have as an ongoing thing that with guests that you're surprised you've heard that might have been also felt like, okay, this is against the grain. If a corporate CEO heard this, they'd have a fit. Was there anything that your guests have ever told you or ongoing that they told you that has changed up the way you're thinking about the work environment and what you do? Anything that's really like blown you away?
Yeah, there was a couple instances, and this was relatively recent during the pandemic, where one organization that makes Hammett bags, they're out of California,
Uh-huh.
luxury designer bags. During the pandemic, of course, when, those early days when we weren't supposed to work together and all of that, they, you know, they had, for a short period of time, had to, you know, shut down operations until they could build in some safety measures in order to be able to continue to make them.
Right.
And they had the employees, when they said, okay, we've set up some things, if you want to come back, you can come back. Otherwise, you can stay out, because California had some additional funds, and including, obviously the stuff from the U.S. government as far as stimulus checks and whatnot. So there was situations, a combination of the stimulus check and the money that the state of California was paying people because they couldn't work. In many cases, those employees would make at or maybe a little bit more than what they were making at the factory to make these designer bags. Every employee to a person declined the California support and went into work. And I'm like,
Wow.
why? But then I know, Tony Drockton, who, leads the organization, the type of environment he runs. Those people adore working there. They love working there. They love their team. So they all, safetied up as best they could and continued to do things. They had, a couple quarters that were really down. And then by Q4, their business and sales were, up towards the top that they'd ever seen.
Wow.
And this again, the dynamic of this, of course, is these are luxury bags.
Yeah.
So people are wearing these out at events. You know, look at my luxury bag.
Yeah.
End of 2020, we still weren't really allowed to go to a lot of events. So it was like, how in the world were sales going up? Because people, recognize we're going to. So I want to have my bags ready as soon as they say you can go out. They were going to be running out and going to the different galas and events and all of that. So they crushed it. Another company, Borsal Insurance out of Boston, Mark Gagne, who's one of the co-owners there, their insurance company increased staffing by 300% during the pandemic.
Wow.
And I was there. I spoke at one of their events, and it was the first time that they had the entire organization come in. And these people were meeting each other for the first time. And because they've been working remote all the time. And he said, we don't see a need to bring these people in. We've got, satellite locations, because they had people not just in Boston, but all across the US that were helping them out. So they were, they figured out a way, and they said, there's dynamics, and those individuals know, okay, if I'm in Nashville, I know a co-working space that I can go if I need to meet with people, or I'm meeting out with clients, or we're doing Zoom calls or whatever. But again, it was one of those things where insurance, one of those classic type of mentalities where they tend to like having people all within the agency so they can talk with each other and all that. So that was forward thinking, and they 3x'd their business, and I haven't talked with them lately, but I'm pretty sure they've probably grown even more since then, because they just growth begets growth. And if you have a growth mindset and a ability to do things, and you get your systems right, then you can scale easier, because okay, we know how we can scale this to this to this, and they've accomplished it and continue to do great things over there. So those are two examples of guests that I've had that just were against the grain of what everything else was doing, and definitely those two individuals will zig when everybody else is zagging, and it's paid off for them tremendously throughout their careers.
I want to ask you one more question. I want to also get into what you're also doing in terms of your speaking engagements, your books, and the podcast itself. And that is, for those that are working now these days, listen, for me, I'm not afraid to go in. I'm not abashed to go and say the fact that I work in the gig economy. I've been 6 years working for Uber. And honestly, it's been nice to have that extra income to put away, to invest, and to take vacations with. But I can't live off of one paycheck. And I imagine now there's a lot more people these days. They might be content creators. They might be doing something else that is on their own dime, on their own time. And they'd rather just have that as opposed to just being stuck with one job. Have you seen a lot more of that lately? And is that something that you also look at as an integration itself? Because people might want to do Uber, DoorDash because, well, they're not getting enough from something else, but they like the idea of working at their own time. For me, I like working on the weekends, and I'm not going to stay home bored. Or I just might not have kids or a wife or, a significant other at home or to go spend time with. So I work. I'm a workaholic. What is it about that you see that we've been now over almost, at least a decade or more now with that gig economy in front of us? How much has that changed right now? And how much as a leader do you have to be cognizant of your employees and what they do with their time outside of work? That it might just not be leisure time anymore.
Right. And it's a thing where a lot of people, depending, and I'm going to be really careful on this one, using your grocery store analogy, I find that older generations are a little less open to having their employees doing some other type of work that could potentially conflict with the work that they're doing, because they're saying, well, 100% of your time should be focused on this job. It's like, no, that's not the agreement.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, how many employees are getting paid what they're worth? And you also know, as a leader, and at least I've always learned the trope that you always want to make sure you're getting 3 times more worth than what you're paying an employee.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you can look at that in 2 different ways. It's like, if you give more than you're paid, then eventually you will reap those benefits, but you have to obviously leverage those accordingly because sometimes there are companies that, for whatever reason, won't or can't compensate you more. But one of the pro things that I love about the gig economy for people, and a lot more people are obviously exploring it now
Oh
because
yeah.
they want to escape the 9 to 5 and trade it for the 9 to midnight, as I like to joke with people. But
Yeah.
when you're in, Steve Jobs said, and I'm paraphrasing this, it's like when you're doing something you love, it's not work. You
Yeah.
lose track of time because you're just in the flow. And of course, you got to, block off time and take vacations and go see a movie or whatever you want to do because you got to harmonize that and it depends on the person and it could depend on the person week by week, so it's really important. And I'm a big advocate for employees doing something and launching a side business, doing something else, because it opens up some creativity of skills and things that they may not be using at their job. And it may open them up to do something. We've seen it time and time again where someone launches a business on their side, and next thing you know, that becomes their full time vocation. And many cases, it's been something that's really benefiting society, whether it's a new product or a service that would have never been birthed if they didn't take that chance and say, you know what, I'm going to launch this side business on this thing that I really
Right.
want to do it. The people that have launched Monday or any of the CRMs or any of the softwares or things like that, or Uber, for example, or anything like that. All those things happen because someone said, you know what, I want to start something over here, and they built it and it took off. And now, it's hard to imagine our lives without a lot of these things. So I am one. If I'm owning a business and I've got somebody working for me, I would be thrilled if they had another job doing something. Of course, you want to make sure that they don't burn themselves out, but that's up to them. But you just keep tabs on it and, make sure that it ebbs and flows, and you don't have to have that. Well, I should get 8 hours out of you. No, get the product or service and work out of them. You're going to get a lot more than quote unquote 8 hours worth of work. You're going to get something that's going to be absolutely spectacular in
But
most
now
cases.
the other part of where I love the fact of the gig economy and how it complements as secondary work is the fact that I worked at a call center that was on a schedule on a regular basis when I was working in radio, and I would go ahead and so I would work for 4 or 5 hours at one place on a shift, and then go right to work after that, an overnight shift working in a cluster of radio stations.
Mhm.
And then I also was doing a part where I would go back, and where my current job is, I'd go back to that same cluster of radio stations and work on weekends over there. But it was a matter that I was working 80 to 85 hours a week at that point, and I had to let it go because the part time I had to let go because it was burning out, because it was the
Mhm.
hours required as opposed to the work required. And
Right.
not being stuck to that schedule makes the big difference, where I don't get burnout now. Because if I want to go ahead and get out of that gig economy for a little bit, I want to go and take a break, I can. If I want to take a vacation, I can. Because even right
Mhm.
now with what I do with my work, if I want to get it done and just cram it into 4 days and say, okay, here's my schedule, and I'm going to just get it all done in 12 hours a day, I could get it done. But I don't want to do that. I want to be able to live my life and then go to the work to live idea and go to that concept so I don't burn out.
Yeah.
And that's where I look at for myself. Is that something you feel like when you talk about the books that you read, that you have right now, let me just bring up a couple of the names. The Great Resignation and Quiet Quitting, Why Employees Are Walking Away from Their Jobs. Then you have Baby Boomer Burnout, Reclaiming Your Life and Finding Balance in the Age of Overwork and Overwhelm. And then Burnout Proof, which is just straight up, and that was a book you put out about how individuals are burning out at alarming rates. And that was a couple of years ago you put that book. But obviously, if you have that secondary job that's not behooving to a schedule, is it more likely that you don't get burned out?
Yeah, because you can control when you work and when you don't, and your energy levels. You get to set the time that you allocate to it. And I know this personally. There are days, and I'm sure this is the same with you, where there are days where like, all right, I'm not feeling it, but I have at least a checklist of things that I know I need to do every day
Right.
regarding whatever. So I check those off. And literally, I have a tablet, I write it down, I check it off, and then I go to the next day, use that same template and wash, rinse, repeat. There are days where if I'm writing or putting out video content or creating content, whatever happens to be, if I'm in a groove and I feel this flow and I'm like, all right, let's do another one. Let's do another one.
Right.
I go with it. I just go with it to the point where, the wife starts yelling, dinner in 10 minutes. It's like, oh, you look up and like, oh, hi, hello, and,
Right.
that,
In the
that kind
zone.
of thing.
It's in
Yeah.
the
And
zone.
that's,
Yeah.
that's my weekends, because during the week, I cook. So I know, and I've got literally alarms on my phone that says, hey, might want to start thinking about dinner. And then there's a follow-up
Yeah.
alarm 17 minutes later. You really need to start thinking about dinner now because if the better half comes home
Right.
and dinner's not ready, well, you better come up with something quick or run across the street and order something quick because, yeah. But again, it's understanding how you flow and how you work and going back to you getting, an understanding where your energy levels are. And so many people aimlessly just go through life and they don't know what their energy levels are, at least from a conscious state. From an unconscious state, your body knows, but consciously speaking, you're like, okay, this morning, I went for a walk. I usually do a morning walk, and first thing this morning, I'm like just take a quick step, just get 10 minutes in at least, but it was 45 minutes. But once I get started, I'm like, okay, let's go. But sometimes we're just not motivated to do it, but that's where discipline comes in. Discipline trumps motivation. So you're motivated to do things, you got to have the discipline to be able to do it, because otherwise motivation can ebb and flow, where discipline is really important for every aspect of your life.
You got a lot working on. I really love what you're providing right now with all that you're saying here. With everything comes, there's so much more we could talk about, but we're running out of time. I got to get to another recording. But the thing is, there's a lot you're doing right now, and it's amazing what you have. Let's get people to the website, which is the one all portal for everything you're looking for, and that is breakfastleadership.com. Breakfastleadership.com. And so you do a lot of speaking engagements. You do interviews like this on a pretty regular basis. I really appreciate you taking time to go ahead and talk to me here on Podcasters Row. I really appreciate that. And for others, you put out a lot of books. I mean, you're churning out a lot of content. And the podcast itself, it's amazing what you're going and being able to go ahead and make all the time for the Breakfast Leadership Show and all these other things that are going on. So anything else I should go ahead and mention here in terms of, I know you're on social media all over the place, or LinkedIn and everywhere else. Anything else you want to close out before we go and wrap up?
Yeah, if they go to breakfastleadership.com, there'll be a pop-up screen where they can get a free copy of Burnout Proof. I just set that up yesterday. I'm like, why am I not giving this book away? Because
Yeah.
I don't like burnout. I don't like it. I had it. It's not fun. I don't want anybody to go through it because I know what it does. It robs society of great products and services. It disrupts families and friendships and work and
Yeah.
you name it. It's a virus. And, if we attack that like we attack other types of illnesses and flus, then, maybe we can get it under control so people can be their best. So yeah, just when you go to breakfastleadership.com, there should be a pop-up. Just enter your email in there and I'll send you a free copy.
Fantastic. And, I don't think I ever got a chance to go and ask you what you did beforehand, but was there anything in terms of, where you came from before you got to this point? What was the one thing that you did that absolutely steered you into the route of being this evangelist on burnout? Like, I want to know if you could tell me in a minute or two just what it was that was the catalyst that caused all this to go ahead and change for you.
Yeah, for me, back in 2009, I had what I called my year of worst case scenarios. I had really bad burnout. I was a healthcare administrator and was really burned out. And over a period of 369 days, I had a heart attack that should have killed me.
Oh my
Then I
God.
Then 17 weeks later, I lost my job during the Great Recession. I was in Windsor, Ontario, across the border from Detroit, Michigan,
Yeah.
which GM, Ford, and Chrysler were all about to go belly up. So
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of jobs in that area. It took me months to find a new job and ended up relocating to a different area. And, after I had moved up there, the family was still back in the other area. We hadn't moved them up yet, so I was commuting on the weekends. My family car got repossessed because we weren't able to make payments on unemployment, plus my drugs for keep my heart healthy and alive were
Yeah.
$1,000 a month. So you had to choose food
Ooh.
and medicine or pay car payment and mortgage. And well, we worked with our creditors as long as we could, but they, of course, during the Great Recession, a lot of people were having problems. So lost the car, and then finally moved the family up, and then we went back to the house to pick up a couple things that we had forgotten during the move, and the bank ultimately foreclosed on the home. So heart
Oh.
attack, job loss, car loss, foreclosure, all of those things happened because I was burned out. So I took those experiences and decided, well, I don't want to go through that again. So what do I need to do? And I did the work and researched what burnout was. And this was again 2010, and just started, getting my mindset around that. And then about 5 years later, started noticing a lot of colleagues in the healthcare industry were burning out. So I did a little bit more and I started writing, and then from there, launched a podcast, launched the consulting firm, started speaking about it, and it's been a nonstop fun and adventure ever since.
I can imagine it's been very rewarding for you. That's really great stuff. You know
Yep.
what? Most podcasters, I'm sure you're going to say, "Oh, I should have asked that first." Because what are you going to ask about? Tell us about yourself. That whole thing. No, I asked it last. But I think it fit better because of the fact that if you would have gone that path with me with this question, and I would have gone and talked about this story, I can only imagine we wouldn't have never gotten to anything about the Breakfast Leadership Network or the podcast, because your story alone, I'm sure you've told quite a bit of that on all of your content. So I want to make sure to people go to your content first and foremost. But Michael, you're doing great work. Thank you again for
Thank
being
you.
on, and really amazing work. I can't believe that you're
Thank
able to
you.
put all this together. And like I said, there's a whole lot more to learn, but I want to make sure that people can go to your books, go to the podcast, breakfastleadership.com, learn all about that there. So with that said, thank you again for being on. Really glad to have you on with me. And we're going to leave it there. And for folks, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening again. God, I'm fumbling over my words today because I'm trying to get my recorder, my player to go ahead and play the music. There we go. See, doesn't want to kick on right away. Anyway, thanks for listening again. Of course, you know where to find yours truly, kingofpodcasts.com, for all of my content. And we'll talk to you next time.